Judith Durant, Chair of the Lowell Democratic City Committee. And just so you know, this session is being recorded. Audience members are welcome to ask questions in the Q&A, type them in there, and they will be presented by one of our panelists, and we will answer as many as time allows. Comments can be shared in the chat. Let's begin.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Zoe Zniku. I work for Senator Kennedy, and we'll just be helping to moderate. And I'm going to pass it right over to Senator Edward Kennedy to kick us off.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for attending this community forum, which is to discuss House Bill 584 and Senate Bill 365, an act relative to anti-racism, equity, and justice in education. I would like to extend a special thanks to Representative Nika Elargado and of Boston, and also to Erica Ivanhoven of Somerville, as well as State Senator Jason Lewis for filing the legislation that we'll be discussing tonight. I'd also like to recognize and thank the representatives from the Lowell Public Schools that are being here tonight, as well as the Lowell Democratic City Committee, which is co-sponsoring this event with my office. Recent events in our nation's history, such as the murder of George Floyd and the January 6th insurrection, have illuminated the social, economic, and health disparities caused by racial inequity in our society, and the immediate danger that wrong information and the rise of white supremacy pose to our democracy. For Massachusetts students to develop into informed and engaged members of society, their education must include a truthful and accurate depiction of our history and the many social issues that have shaped that history. The classroom should be a place where all students, including students of color and students from immigrant and indigenous backgrounds, can find their rightful place reflected in the history they learn. To accomplish this, our teachers and school counselors require training and in the practices to uplift students of all ethnicities and backgrounds. The topic of tonight's forum, Senate Bill 365 and House Bill 584, an act relative to anti-racism, equity, and justice in education, is legislation which seeks to incorporate these values into the Commonwealth's education system. Once again, thank you all for being here tonight, and I'll now turn the forum over to our speakers. So.
Thank you so much, Senator Kennedy, and thank you so much for those remarks. It's so important that everything that you said and the fact that you're having this forum tonight. I would first like to recognize two of our youth testimonies that folks that are going to be testifying tonight, which is Tara Hong and Curtis Chathabon, and they are leaders of our community and our young community, which are so important in everything today. So what I'm going to do right now is have Mr. Tara Hong go ahead and just give us a little bit about what it is that he's feeling, especially about this bill.
Do you want Curtis go first?
Oh, sure. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Curtis. And it's so wonderful because Curtis is one of our young people, and he's actually working, but he's taking a break from Market Basket, and we do appreciate you so much for being here, Curtis. Curtis, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to go first on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me all right. Good. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Curtis Chantapoon, and I'm a 16-year-old biracial junior of Asian descent at Lowell High School. It is an honor and a privilege to speak in front of you all tonight. Today, I'm here to share my personal experiences with racism and discrimination at Lowell High School. I don't want to dumb it down or make it sound pretty, so I'm just going to get right into it. During my in-person learning of freshman year, I could see racism and discrimination around every corner. There was no effort given to stop it. I wasn't accepted by the white kids or the Asian kids. I was always ridiculed from both sides, saying things like, "You're not even Asian," or "You're white," or vice versa. "You're not even white, you're Asian, but you're half. You're not even full." And some of these comments were within earshot of teachers, but no effort was made to stop them. I was disheartened and surprised. Before we transitioned from middle school to the high school, administrators touted their efforts at diversity, equity, and inclusion at Lowell High School, and I was excited to get to high school. However, after arriving there, I found the real experience to be troubling. We would hear the N-word thrown around by all demographics. As a biracial Asian 14-year-old at the time, it was disconcerting to be exposed to this language, and also very surprising that kids were not corrected by teachers, even though we were explicitly told that this sort of language was not acceptable. COVID hit and we had remote learning. After a year and a half of remote learning, we returned to the fall of 2021, and the same issues lingered, and frankly, some of the issues were worse. The language became coarser, which included racial slurs beyond the N-word. Students across all demographics used multiple racial slurs towards Asian American students, including tired tropes like dog eater, cat eater, and the very epithet of COVID spreader. Particularly shocking given that the student population is substantially Asian. It's hard to understand why kids would want to hurt their peers based on their race, but it's not hard to understand how we got here. The core LHS curriculum and culture is very white European centric. So when students are given the distorted view that all good things and all developments and progress come from white people, that hurts all the students. White students learn very little about the real world, and students of color learn that contributions from non-white folks are not valued or needed. How are we supposed to embrace the American dream if no one is interested in what we have to say or how we feel? So tonight, I'm here to request you, Senator Kennedy, to support and sponsor S365 and S584, an act relative to anti-racism, equity, and justice in education. This bill will help to set up a funded system for expanded education with a less distorted worldview, as well as a more diverse faculty, a system that will be particularly meaningful to me, but helpful to all students regardless of demographic. We deserve a more accurate and honest education. It is also hard feeling accepted when you don't see yourself being represented. The inclusion of ethnic studies will give students like myself a more well-rounded education that will better prepare me for the 21st century global economy and be a better national and global citizen. S365 and H584 can supply grants to Lowell High School, allowing the opportunity for teacher professional development so that they can develop and teach a more racially inclusive curriculum with thought-provoking classes. A study by Johns Hopkins University concluded that Black students who'd had just one Black teacher by third grade were 13% more likely to enroll in college. And those who'd had two were 32% more likely. Although the school's staff diversity is increasing, it is still pretty low given our student demographics. You know, adults are always saying that it is not their fault that we have racial disparities and discrimination because it's the system. Seriously, we are the system, and we have an obligation to change the system of cycles perpetuating of racism and bigotry. Senator Kennedy, please help us fix the system and support the students and teachers of Lowell by co-sponsoring this bill. Thank you.
Zoe,
Yeah,
Okay.
so, go ahead.
can I ask Curtis a question before his break's over?
Absolutely.
You're a junior now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so has there been a difference in what you've seen as racism at the school since you were a freshman? Has that improved as since you've been now that you're a junior, you know more people than you did when you were a freshman, obviously. And so has that situation improved, or is it still exactly the same as it was when you were a freshman? And maybe
I believe, like I said, it has partially gotten worse, especially through the broader language that is used by students. So some words are apparently more acceptable now, and is used across all demographics. Like the N-word is used by all demographics at Lowell High School, and there's no curriculum teaching us what words are right or wrong. There's no direct person telling us what's right from wrong, and it's so common that like you'd think it was taught to us how to say these words.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. And I think before it's my fault, but I just wanted to preface this that the legislatures that are on currently are all co-sponsors of this bill, including Senator Kennedy. So as we go on to Mr. Tara Hong, thank you again, Curtis, for the powerful testimony. And Tara, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me being here to share my story. And I immigrated from Cambodia at the age of 13. Racism have impacted me on a daily basis in ways both big and small. We live in a country that have historically been portrayed as the land of opportunity, welcoming all immigrants with open arms from countries around the world. Coming to America is a chance to build a better life, and my family have done that, but not without cost. When I first got to this country at age 13 and went to school right here in Lowell, people make fun of my appearance, accent, wardrobe, and overall manner on a daily basis. I don't even understand why they do that. Why did they see me as other? Why did anyone think that it's okay to make fun of me? What make them enjoy my pain? I didn't speak English, and I do not have the tool to fight back. I could not even understand most of the time exactly what they were saying, but I did understand that they were being disrespectful. While I eventually learned English through EL class, I still struggle to advocate for myself and let trust adults know that I needed help. As immigrant, my family came to this country because we believe that this is our chance to live a country with one party rule, no democracy or freedom for the people to build a better life and be free to be our authentic self. Yet, for people of color, we don't have that luxury. Racism exists everywhere we go, in our classroom, on the street, in restaurant. A decade later, I still hear hateful language in Lowell, and now with my excellent English skill, I really understand the depth of the harm. People are redundant for their look, accent, and lack of design clothes, etc., regard of age, having long-term mental health impact on not only the target, but also the bystander. We must take action to stop the roof of bias and lead to the blind hate, not only to build a just society, but also to build a kind society. Bill S365 does H584 and acts relative to anti-racism, equity, and justice in education will be the first step to reforming the very system that seek this bias and will allow students of all races to understand the constituent of all ethnic group by funding curriculum reform so that everyone can be honest, get the honest education. I am here today to encourage you, everyone here, and thank you for sponsoring the bill, Senator, and many other elected officials here, to encourage other elected officials, your friend at the State House, to think deeper of the importance behind this bill to our public education system. Being honest to everyone constituent help to migrate the bias and see the racism in the first place. Everyone have their own story to tell and their own culture to share with the rest of the world. And giving kids true window and mirror will teach children to know that why judging others on skin color is entirely wrong. Regardless of skin color, all students should feel a part of school. We deserve a chance, it's the same chance at the American dream as our other white counterpart. I cannot change the past, but now, 9 years later, as a college student, I'm here to ask you to do better for the future student. As with the marriage equality, the Commonwealth can once again be the leader in moving our country toward the dream of a perfect union. So please support this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that impassioned plea, Tara. We do appreciate it. Very compelling. So what I now want to do is, I know that we have the majority of our folks that have logged on and then also tuned in via Zoom. We are up to over 143 and then also live on Facebook. Wanted to introduce our state representative, Vanna Howard, to go ahead and introduce Nika and say a few words. Vanna, thank you so much for being the co-sponsor of this bill, and please go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. I'm a strong supporter of this bill, and This bill couldn't be more timely given the events of the last few years, which has exacerbated and laid bare the urgent need to educate our children on these issues and empower our teachers and schools counselors with information on the very worst examples and results of human behavior. Passage and implementation of this bill is long overdue. And with all the support for this legislation and the tireless advocacy by the CARE Coalition, I'm confident we'll get it done. And for that, I'm very pleased to introduce to you the guiding light, my sister in service behind this legislation, Representative Nika Alaguado of Jamaica Plain. I know Representative Erica Ida-Hoven, who couldn't be here tonight, another guiding light, my sister in service. So Representative Alaguado, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rep. Howard. And you know, the true guiding light is the CARE Coalition that brought this bill before me, and much thanks to the co-filers, Representative Ida-Hoven and Senator Lewis. I also want to thank Senator Kennedy for hosting today, and thank you, Zoe, for the great job you're doing, guiding us all through this process, and for everyone who's come on today. You know, many of us realize that education is a right that was enshrined in our state constitution, and our national constitution was framed after the Massachusetts Constitution. So yes, Tara, we led on marriage equality, and we've led on so many rights being enshrined in our various public institutions that were both made public for the first time in Massachusetts, whether it be libraries, courts, nursing, so many institutions and professions here first. But do we really have equity in education? So that's a question. So we have that right. And when the students come through on Kids Day, which when it's not a pandemic, we have in my office every 5th Saturday, when we've had kids ages 3 to 18, and even a few 19-year-olds squeezed in, and we show them and give them, if they want it, a copy of our state constitution, which is free. You come to the State House, and we show them in there where it guarantees them the right to equal education. When you hear stories like Curtis and Tara, do you think that these two young men have experienced an equal education as compared to their peers, that we're not having to deal with this bullying and ignorance? You know, so H584 and the Senate counterpart, it's really about just taking one very critical but insufficient step to starting to make education equal, not only from the standpoint of the resources that you have in the building. We have a long way to go there, and we've been doing some advocacy around funding. But even when you have plenty of resources in your building, the ignorance inside of the minds of the people can tear down your experience. And many of us have experienced that in different settings, regardless of our race or even gender, right? And when we say people are disproportionately impacted, what does that mean? It means something bad happens to everybody, and it happens even more to certain people because of what they look like, or where they come from, or where they were born. And so this is not a bill, as both of our youth speakers have eloquently stated, that's just about it's not about doing some kind of charity service for people that look like me or Tara or Curtis, right? Or many other people on this call. It's about bringing about justice for all of us, that brings about progress for all of us and opportunity for all of us. And so that's really critical. So I was asked to speak about what the bill does. And what I really love about this bill is its simplicity and the powerfulness and directness of its effect and impacts. So number one, it creates an education fund that would be administered by DESE. So that's the Early and Secondary Education Department, right? And so this fund would make sure that this was not an unfunded mandate, for those who have heard that term. Many of the adults, especially on the call, know what that means. But kids, it means you say you got to do something, but then you don't pay for it. So we're saying put your money where your mouth is. Number two, it establishes a commission with many diverse institutions represented. And that the composition of that commission, if you look up the bill on the MA legislature website, there's the original language there. But thanks to various advocates, from the Muslim community, for example, we have been negotiating language that's more inclusive. And so we're currently working on that. The CARE Coalition is working carefully with Senator Lewis, who is the lead on the bill in terms of developing the language, so that we can make sure that it's as inclusive as possible. Like you may know, the legislative process is one of collaboration and development. And so we're continuing to collaborate to make sure that the final language is language that makes sure that everyone's voice is included. Now, what does that commission do? They provide recommendations. And recommendations are important because that gives advocates, families, students, schools, and all the members of all the residents of the Commonwealth the tools to advocate for specific forms of change that are educated by this commission. And those include recommendations about curriculum and how to build anti-racism into the curriculum at its core. So if you go right now on the DESE website, there are all kinds of frameworks, and each one has a little bit of something about anti-racism in it on some level, but there's not a general overarching framework for anti-racism across the curriculum. It also looks at recommendations for licensure, because you may have noticed that when you look around, and one of the students mentioned the power of having a teacher that looks like you. And when you look around, if you're not white, then chances are you may never have a teacher that looks like you, or you might have one or two, and even that is very helpful. And part of that is because of inequity in the licensure system. And there are many bills this session, several bills that are trying to address that. And this is one of them through the commission's recommendations. And then finally, professional development, because putting something in the curriculum, I did teaching classes when I was in college. And I took this one class called the Algebra Project. And when they placed me in a school, they placed me with a teacher that hated teaching algebra. So even though I had learned all this great stuff and we had this amazing curriculum that had been tested, the students in my class didn't do well because the teacher made a big sigh and groan every time she pulled out the algebra book. All right, so professional development prevents that type of thing. And I remember watching with jealousy as my student peers would be in other classes where the teachers were very excited about this curriculum, right? So it makes a big difference in professional development. So the commission is comprehensive, not just looking at the words on the page or in the books that the students are reading, but really looking at who's teaching that and also looking at what they are learning as teachers and the experiences that they're developing to bring something more inclusive and powerful into the classroom. So the bill doesn't stop there. It also provides for a grant program so that schools and districts can actually apply for money to implement this at the local level. And so you see how this is holistic, how it's comprehensive, and we would love to see all three of those components make it through. Now, the CARE Coalition has been extremely strategic. They talked with many legislators, and I know with me, they did a training and on how to do strategic outreach. And wow, look at these fantastic, it's not just these webinars. They've educated not only the filers, like myself, but legislators from all over the Commonwealth, both representatives and senators, as you can see. And that strategic outreach is something that the listeners can participate in. So definitely reach out to the organizers to find out how you can reach out to your senator and rep. They may have already heard, but you want to say, please make sure this bill goes to the floor for a vote. Even if you're a supporter, can you please ask the leadership to send this to the floor for a vote? And then ask them whether they did it or not. Ask us whether we did it or not, all right? Because we love that type of accountability, because we like knowing what our constituents care about, not just wanting us to co-sponsor, but also giving us specific instruction on the next step and showing that you understand the civic process all the way through to the end is a very powerful form of accountability for all of us who represent you. The CARE Coalition hasn't just stopped, however, at outreach. And that's a common mistake that I made even in my first session. I'm only in my second session. And now I'm learning, and I've been sharing with this and learning from the CARE Coalition, political diplomacy is also part of it. So knowing what's in the bill and knowing the importance of the bill is really a first step of several steps to getting that bill to the floor. Political diplomacy means knowing who cares about this bill or the outcomes. So that's the Mass Superintendents Association. That's groups like Latinos for Education, right? That's groups that are representing culture groups that are often disenfranchised, like multiple Muslim and Islamic association groups that have reached out to us, right? And making sure that these groups feel heard and have ownership of the language of this bill. And that requires a different kind of outreach, not simply reaching out to the 160 reps and the 40 senators, but really challenging ourselves to open up our minds and hearts to viewpoints that we might not have considered, and wrapping those into this bill, because this bill is founded on that type of inclusion, right? And so we have to model that in how we do our political advocacy as well as the advocacy around the bill itself. And then finally, here's a clue that I just really started to pick up on, and I've started telling everybody about it. Senator Kennedy might laugh because he's been around for a while. It might seem obvious to old schoolers like Senator Kennedy, but the vehicle that you attach your bill to can be the most important decision for getting it to the floor for a vote. What's a vehicle? Do I mean a Subaru or a Ferrari? No, I do not. Okay, so vehicle is the word that we use often in the legislature for the bill that you attach other bills to. So some people are already going to know what we're talking about, but raise your hand, even though I can't see it, if you know what an amendment is. All right, so when you amend a bill, right, you add something onto the bill. You can add entire bills onto other bills. I didn't know that until I became a legislator. Very often the bill that you file will not go through the whole legislature looking like it did, but even when you get the language right, it can just sit there in a second or third committee where everybody likes the bill, but it doesn't have a vehicle to go through, because there are certain bills that have a lot of momentum and a lot of support at the leadership level and have been around for years and been vetted for many years, and they're ready to go. Every once in a while, you're lucky enough that your little bill that you filed for the first time this session, like this bill, this first session bill, they don't usually go through, you can attach that to some other bill. And that's important for you to know, because there are some great education bills going through the Education Committee. And our wonderful education chairs, Chair Paish on the House side and Chair Lewis on the Senate side, are looking at all those bills to see where do we have the most momentum. And I can tell you right now, there is strong momentum around teacher diversity bills. And those are bills that help to make sure that there's equity in the testing process to bring teachers on. Somebody's not muted, I don't know. It sounds probably better than my voice, but everybody check your mute. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you, Zoe, for taking care of that, or whoever was watching our backs. But yeah, so that vehicle this time might look like attaching this bill to a bill about teacher diversity, because that's where we have a lot of momentum, bills that have been working their way through the system for more than one session. And through the House, we know that Chair Paish and Chair Lewis have filed one of those bills. So it's very important that you're also able to communicate, in addition to the importance of this bill, how it's related to teacher diversity. And when you can include that in your stories, that teacher diversity without curricular diversity is going to fall flat in terms of the outcomes we're looking for justice and equity in education, right? When you can make that argument very strong and very clear, that can help when we try to attach bills like this one and other bills that relate to education equity that have been filed to maybe an omnibus bill that might go through the House or might go through the Senate. And I have it on good authority that the Senate is somewhat amenable to an omnibus education bill. So we want to start thinking like that and bringing the data and the stories that help back up that connection, so that we don't allow a really good bill to get through on teacher diversity that's not doing all that it can do. And we think here, doing all that it can do means making sure that the curriculum is in place to support those teachers when they come in, so they're not being burnt out, because they're the only people of color, and as the only people of color are called upon by every white teacher to do everything and all the heavy lifting around education. We know in COVID, we lost a lot of teachers that way, didn't we? Of every race, but we lost a lot of teachers of color because of the heavy lifting that they had to do dealing with the vast disparities that were exacerbated by COVID, and they're kids of color, and teachers, administrators looking to them, what should we do? That's a lot of pressure. So it's very important that this bill go through to support those teachers that will come in as a result of teacher diversity bill. So we need to make that argument. I'll finish with the story. Somebody says, I do not believe that to be true. Please put that in the question so we can address it in the Q&A and talk about that together, because I'm not sure which that is. But in any case, when I was in high school, I had similar experiences to what our young students here described. And for example, I wanted to take a high-level math exam for entrance into college. And I ended up going to MIT. And so you need a high-level math exam to get in there. And the teacher said to me, the teacher said to me, Nika, we want you to go take that test. At this point, I wasn't even thinking of colleges. And I went to the guidance counselor to get that. Kids, we had to get paper and sign up things for paper back then because there was no internet. That's how old I am. No internet, no cell phones. So we sign up for the paper, but I go to get the paper application and she doesn't give it to me. She says, it's gonna be a waste of your time and mine. And I said, why would you say that? She said, because you're not gonna pass that test. And so why don't you just take the level 1 lower exam? I'll give you the application for that. I said, I just met you today. My math teacher says I should take level 2. And she said, I told you I'm not wasting your time or mine. So I said, I'm going to search your office until I find the application. I did that. I put everything back nicely, kids. I didn't leave it in bad shape. I got that application. I took the test. I aced it. And I got into the 5 schools, which I applied, and I went to MIT. Okay. Now that's important, not just because obviously from that story, you're thinking, wow, that guidance counselor needs to be educated. I had other teachers that also had said similarly ignorant things to me. Thank God I had these other counterbalancing teachers, that knew what they were talking about when they looked at me. But at the same time, what else happens? I knew my own back. I knew to fight back. Why did I know that? My parents put me in summer school, Arambe Yaruhu, and I learned about Black heritage and power from a very young age. And so when I encountered that ignorance, I recognized it as such, and I did not accept it. The power of learning who you are and where you come from cannot be overestimated. And so we absolutely need to partner that with every other kind of bill that's looking at equity in education. So thank you for hearing out my story, and thank you for being here today. And I hope I've equipped you with some tools to go continue to advocate for this bill and to get it done this session.
Thank you so much, Rep. Elgardo, for that powerful testimony. We do appreciate your words of wisdom, and that story at the end, very inspiring. Thank you again for being a true aspirant of this bill. So we're going to go into our expert testimonies now. We have 3 educators, one of whom is going to be first, who's Stacy Thompson. She's a school committee elect. And then we're going to go into Patty Ann Cox, who's an elementary special needs teacher, and then Kendra Bauer, who is a high school teacher, and then we're going to also round it out with our current school committee board member, Dominic Lay. So Stacy Thompson, go ahead and take it away.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. So I'm just going to get right into it. I know we're crunched for time. The first time I recall being called the N-word was in the 5th grade cafeteria. It was the same day that my teacher asked me if talking about slavery in class would be okay. Along with some teaching about Aborigines, that was the extent of consistent and detailed acknowledgement of people who looked like me. This was also the extent of talking about Black people in American history, not as a free people of vast and varied contributions, including building the industrial infrastructure of our country, but just as demoralized, as sad, as subhuman as minorities. Decades later, as a teacher sitting at my desk, looking out over my class and preparing a history lesson for my students, I noticed that not much had changed. Yes, a few new groups beyond the typical had been emphasized. However, as I looked at the faces of my Dominican, Cambodian, Puerto Rican, Thai, Haitian, Vietnamese students, a multiracial and multicultural group, I wondered if they could see themselves and their contributions of their culture and their people in the fabric of this nation. So I did what concerned teachers do. I did more. I expanded the curriculum. I found ways to weave in these stories that had been intentionally and unintentionally absent. I expanded knowledge. It instilled pride. It ensured that they were seen. You see, representation, it matters. Truth matters. And the greatness of a student or a person can be empowered or diminished if the stories and the legacies are not recognized. The last time I was called the N-word was actually 2 days before I was just elected to my role as school committee member. And while it hurt, I know that my story is more than that. It also reaffirmed that there was so much work to be done. And I recommitted myself, and that is why I committed myself to the students of Lowell. This is also why I'm here tonight, asking Senator Kennedy and the larger Lowell community to continue to and advocate for H584 and S365, an act relative to anti-racism, equity, and justice in education. If we truly want to do this work, we have to commit to doing it with honesty and integrity, and with the resources needed to make it sustainable. We need a commission of diverse and expert voices to start the process of finding out what's missing, what we should be adding, subtracting, or fixing, and understanding that there must be sound pedagogy to execute the work. Additionally, it means we need to fund the professional development to execute this work, and that it costs money. And as a school committee member, I do understand, or an elect, I do understand that the resources may be limited and that we need to tap into the state level support and commitment to do this work right. So I'm particularly excited about the public-private funding mechanism for this work to be done. We need this bill to work, and we need this bill in order to make sure the work is done correctly. Our students deserve educational excellence, and supporting this legislation marches us, much like all those who have fought for our civil rights, one step further towards equity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stacy. That was very powerful. Again, thank you. Patty Spence-Cox, please.
Hi there. Good evening. As was just stated, my name is Patty Ann Spence-Cox, and I'm a special education teacher for the Lowell Public Schools. I have been a part of the Lowell Public Schools community since 2003, where I started as a parent liaison at my daughter's school. I worked myself through the school system, and now I have been a special education teacher for 15 years. I am honored to have been chosen to address this forum to support these bills, S365 and H584. I am one of only 5 BIPOC educators in my school. I'm painfully aware of racial inequity, more diverse. My school body is primarily Hispanic, with Cambodian students and white students and a minimal amount of Black students. My school strives to be inclusive in the areas of social equity and justice through a monthly scholars program. At this program, themes such as identity, inclusive relationships, community, and empathy are discussed with students during daily morning meetings. However, these programs fail to adequately address the inequities in staffing, curriculum, pedagogy, and educational practices. It would be very encouraging for me to see these bills come to fruition, as they would start to lay the groundwork to create a commission that will aid in dismantling these long-standing inequities. This bill is encouraging because it promises to give educators a much-needed voice in obtaining more effective and relevant professional development to further promote racial justice in our schools. And I need to add that I am also an immigrant, as are Tara and Curtis. I immigrated to this country in 1989 from Jamaica. And I went through the educational system as a college student. But I also had children in the Lowell public schools. And I did have a child who was a special education child. And I saw the inequities in even his education. He was seen as just a troublemaker, which was very sad as a mom. So I think that's one of the reasons why I became a teacher, because I needed to be in the fight. And special education is something that is very, very close to my heart because of my stepson. So I just needed to add that. As a BIPOC educator, it is glaringly evident that there needs to be more diversity in our staffing because it needs to reflect the diverse population of the Lowell public schools. These programs need to be more well-funded so that we can recruit and retain teachers of colors. Teachers of color leave because of some of the discrimination that we can feel, that we're looked at as not being as respected as our white counterparts. So if this bill passes, I hope it will be supportive of all educators because we do need our white allies in this fight with us, so that we can provide all learners with the appropriate tools that can help them to become more culturally, socially, and racially aware from kindergarten, from the minute they enter our doors through adulthood. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share.
Thank you again so much, Patty, and that was really, really wonderful, everything that you just spoke about. Kendra, go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me. So I just will say I've had the undeniable privilege over the past 16 years of teaching in Lowell, Massachusetts at Lowell High School. My students inspire me on a daily basis to serve them better and to be better. I have to ask myself, what does it mean to be a better teacher? And the first part of becoming a better educator is to listen. We must really listen to our students. Currently, I'm teaching students who speak 27 different languages. There are almost double that number of languages spoken in the high school. Every text set in front of my students is selected and curated by me, their white teacher, and influenced by Common Core, which was often created in white academia. At what point are we going to question this? Almost a decade ago now, I began to push to change the curriculum in the English department at Lowell High School. I currently teach race and ethnicity in literature, film in society, and gender and identity in literature. I said I was lucky, right? These courses were created because I listened to students when they questioned why we were reading what we're reading. Is the language of Harper Lee more complex and important than that of James Baldwin? Is Shakespeare more important and more relevant than Lorraine Hansberry? And why do we not even know who Brandon Jenkins is? A contemporary, amazing Juilliard, NYU, Princeton playwright. My students are hungry to talk about Black Lives Matter, to read poetry written by contemporary Asian poets, to discuss why Cambodian American graduation rates are some of the lowest in our country, when Asian graduation rates are some of the highest in our country. The classes I teach involve music videos read as text, which my students bring into our discussions. When news of an insurgence on our Capitol building breaks and when another Black or brown body is attacked in another one of our nation's citizens, curriculum has to adapt. Our curriculum needs to be examined with a critical lens. The language we use in our classroom has the power to elevate or to oppress. As teachers, as educators, we are instruments for shaping the future of this country. And I personally want students who can think critically about the way they are treated and the way that they treat others. So tonight, I'm here to thank you, Senator Kennedy, for supporting and sponsoring S365 and S580 eat for, that's hard to say, an act relative to anti-racism, equity, and justice in education. This bill will help to set up and fund a commission to examine the curriculum. Then there'll be funding for curriculum development, development of new pedagogy, and professional development so that teachers can actually deliver the new material. Teachers want to do the work, and you already heard from students that we have work to do, but we need the resources to do it tonight. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Kendra. That was impassionate. Wow, excellent. Okay, let's move forward now. It looks like we're going to have one more speaker, and we want to also recognize one of our leaders here within the education system, Middlesex Community College. Mr. Phil Sisson is on with us. We just wanted to just say thank you for coming, sir, and welcome. And now we're going to give an opportunity to sitting school committee member Dominic Lay just to say a couple of words. This is impromptu, so go ahead, Dominic.
Thank you, Zoe, for doing a great job. Can you hear me, right? Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, good, good. Okay, and thank you, Judith Durand and Senator Kennedy for hosting this important forum. Yes, we heard powerful but sad testimonies from our youth, Tara and Curtis, and great testimonies from our teachers. We should not look down on people. Skin color, cultures, and background has been the base for racism for many years, and it should be stopped. Anyone should not go through it anymore, and especially our children in our schools. So I just want to thank you, Senator Lewis, Senator Kennedy, and Rep. Allegado for sponsoring these two bills, S365 and H584. Having academic curriculum and having funding to execute these projects are encouraging, and I urge that all of our senators, state senator, and our state rep support these two bills. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you, Zoe.
You're welcome. Thanks, Dominic. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over now to Shaw Yang to take it away and ask for that action. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Hi, I'm Shaw Yang with the CARE Coalition. So I'll keep it short because time is running short. But yeah, first I want to thank Senator Kennedy, Representatives Howard and Allegado for actively supporting this bill. We're so blessed, so happy to see that. I'm going to do a very quick share screen so you can see our webpage. Can you see it? So this is our CARE webpage. So you can find out the bills here, the legislators, the endorsements. We have like 30 organizations who endorse this. Testimonies, we have probably over 100 written testimonies already. And then the take action page is what I'm going to show right here. As you can see, what you can help us is really to reach out. We need to reach out to all across Massachusetts, all the legislators. There's a lot of work to be done, but I hope all of you can do a couple things. One, if you haven't, if your legislator hasn't co-sponsored yet, write to them using these links here. Write to your legislators. They have customized emails that you can customize. Students, parents, teachers. You can see it here, as well as write to the chairs of the Education Committee, Representatives Peisch, Chair Peisch, and Senator Lewis. Again, click the link here. It'll show you how to do it. The other thing I would like to ask you to do is really reach out. We would love to have more forums like this. We had 3 so far, and we would love to do 10 more. So please reach out across the states, across all geography, across all races, ethnicities. We really need to get the word out for this to pass in the session. So our website and all our social media is called CARE for Equity. That's CARE, the number 4, Edu Equity. So you can see this is the CARE for Equity webpage. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as the Gmail, CARE for Equity Gmail. We're also looking for adding more to our co-organizing team. If you're really interested in volunteering, actually do some planning and strategies and reaching out, please contact us. It's on the webpage. Okay, so that's it. So let me stop sharing, and I hope you can all support. And well, we're looking really good. We're gaining strong momentum, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Okay, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Shaw. So we do have a little less time than we anticipated originally. However, we still have about 7 minutes to do some question and answers. And right now we have Rep. Algardo, who's able to answer, as well as Shaw Yang from CARE. So there's 4 questions that are currently like in the queue. One of them says, will all teachers be affected or new teachers only? A second question is, how far are these bills along in being voted on, and what are they called again? So anyone can take that.
Those.
Okay.
So I've dropped in the chat. Thank you for those very practical questions. The bill H584, which is called an act relative to anti-racism, equity, and justice in education. You can click on that link and that'll take you to the Senate bill as well. You can track the progress there if you click on the tabs at that link. Right now, we've already come out of the House and over into the Senate. So the bill is being processed in Senate. I'm not sure how much time we have before we get to the next step on the Senate side. But if there's anybody from the Senate here that can give us that information, that's great. And I think if you follow along there's a place where you can sign up to get information about the bill as it progresses, or you can reach out to your rep and ask them to keep you posted.
Sure. Thank you so much, Rep. Algardo. James, as our legislative director, do you have any comments on that at all?
I don't
Sorry.
know the timeline on anything, but I don't know if the senator does, but
Well, Zoe?
Yes, thank you,
Yeah.
Senator Kennedy. Go ahead.
I think it's fair to say that, for the rest of this month, the Senate will be on informal session, so it would be unlikely that there would be action during this month. However, starting in January, we'll be back to formal sessions, and I would anticipate that there'll be some activity regarding this possibly in January. And just for everybody that's on the call, let me just say that I expect to call Jason Lewis, who is the Senate chair on the Joint Committee on Education, tomorrow to discuss the bill with him a little bit further. So anybody that wants an update on this bill going forward, if they call my office, and they'll probably end up speaking to Zoe if they do, right? So
yes.
And she will be armed with that information. She maybe doesn't have it today, but she'll have it tomorrow for sure.
Okay, great.
Thank
you, Senator.
And on the first question, I would say, so this bill does not prescribe any type of curriculum. It establishes a commission. And so the teachers will be affected only once DESE takes those recommendations, describes what to do with them, and who they will impact. And so this bill is much earlier in the process than that. And yes, the CARE Coalition has reached out to Latinos for Education, and maybe someone from the CARE Coalition can talk about the progress of that work, like Shaw or Maidu.
The CARE Coalition has been working closely with with Senator Jason Lewis's office, who is, as we know, a co-chair of the Joint Committee on Education. So as Rep. Algardo has very eloquently described how our bill fits very naturally with the teacher diversity bill, which is sponsored by the Latinos for Education, is our hope that we will be collaborating together so that we can forward the reality of more support for diverse teachers, more cultivation for diverse teachers, and in that sense, being able to help recruit and retain diverse teachers. So we are very much looking forward to being able to further collaborate and see that the two bills can be paired together and move forward together. That is our hope, and we would love to hear more from the community more from everybody across the state to get the same message across for those who have been supporting their teachers diversity bill, to see that we can be working together for the same vision, the same positive impact.
Thank you so much. So as we're rounding out and closing our program, just wanted to give Shaw another chance to a call to action, everyone on this call and that's watching right now, what it is that CORE needs, and give you an opportunity, 30 seconds. And then I'm going to have, again, thank Rep. Vanna Howard for her time on this, and then have Senator Ed Kennedy go ahead and close this out.
Okay, I'll be very brief. Again, Care for Equity. Join us, reach out to your network, community, legislators. And we also are looking for even more diversity of our co-organizing team. So if you know people who want, people of color, especially maybe more brown and black folks, I think will be really helpful to have more people as a planning team. So again, Care for Equity, right? Thank you.
Our coalition would also love to answer any questions that are still unanswered here, particularly around details of the bill and content. It's a commission, so we're not advocating for specific content. We're advocating for the commission and a trust fund.
Okay. Anything else to add, Mike?
No, we're just so grateful to Senator Kennedy for hosting this amazing forum. We've been hearing from folks from Lowell and your district, but for you to be able to provide an official platform for folks to share their experiences and testimonies, and then to see how this is such a passion for many, and a very needed discussion. Thank you so much, Senator Kennedy. Thank you so much for Rep. Howard and all the legislators who are leading this work. And I know Judith has been working so hard on this. So we
want to shout out to Judith.
Cannot thank her enough and her team for putting this together.
Thank you.
Great job, Judith.
Yeah,
great job, Judith.
I wanted to particularly thank the panelists. I think I just want to quickly recognize that to do the work, it takes a lot of emotional labor for the youth to come and tell their story, and then for the teachers to share their experience. And tonight we were all uplifted because of their sentiments. So I wanted to give a special shout out to the panelists. It's the panelists who very much make the program what it is. And thank you, Senator Kennedy, for taking the time and putting the resources towards hosting this. We so appreciate it.
The youth across the state have been just fabulous leaders pushing this bill forward. So in addition to Tara and Curtis tonight, we have heard from so many diverse youth leaders from across the state. And so rest assured that they are doing this work, and they're not gonna stop until we actually make change. Thank you.
I'll be publishing excerpts from the testimonies. We have at least 30 or more youth testimonies. So I still need to do my homework, but I'll get on the website.
Excellent. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Senator Kennedy to close this out.
Thanks. So I'll see how quickly I can do this. First of all, I just would like to commend the CARE Coalition. I think this is a very smart way to build grassroots support for a cause or for a bill. And I will be happy to mention to some of my colleagues that they may want to host similar forums to kind of help spread the word. I'd like to thank all of the panelists. I think they all did a great job. And I also want to thank panelist Stacy Thompson and congratulate her for being elected to the Lowell School Committee. I'm sure she's going to do a good job starting at the beginning of January. Representative Legato, thank you very much for filing this legislation in the first place and for what I thought was just a great explanation of the legislation that certainly everybody could understand. And finally, I would just like to thank Representative Vanna Howard for being on this forum for the whole time, and also the president of Middlesex Community College, Phil Sisson, for being here as well. Certainly an advocate for the subject matter. And finally, and Dominic Lay, who's a member of the school committee as well too. But finally, let me just thank Zoe, who did an excellent job on chairing this forum. So thank you all very much for spending an hour on a Monday night on a subject like this. I think it was well worth it. And let's hope that there are more and more of these forums and that the legislation passes during this session.